Can't deal with you. Come here.
She's not ready.
Why don't you want to be on camera?
She's ready to bolt at any moment's notice.
What's the matter? Hey y'all, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan and there is cat hair flying around this camera. During the month of February, this is gonna be a good one. For the entire month of February, I did daily uploads of nothing but stories you guys have sent in to me, and we are going to continue on with that today. Also, past February, I'm going to be doing that 5 days out of the week, so please check out the description below. Send me in your stories, check out my other socials and my podcast and all that. Without further ado, let's get into these stories. I emailed you back in August of 2024 about strange things going on in our house that we thought could be something attached to us. I was catching up on your videos because 2024 and the beginning of 2025 have been rough, and I realized I forgot to give you more recent updates. With everything going on, I didn't really think about it. So just when we thought things could not get any creepier, it got creepier. I have separate incidents here, and while this is out of order in regards to the timeline, I figured I'd save what really scared us for the last. So to start, in December, something weird happened. We let our dog out while we were loading presents into the car to drop things off ahead of Christmas, and the back door was wide open, including our screen door. The front door was open only just a little bit, and there was a tiny breeze in the air. The breeze was going towards the house from the back door. Not even hardly enough to move our screen door that was wide open. Everything was fine, and we were close to done when our front door slammed shut. I don't mean like it was pushed to barely close, no. I mean it slammed shut entirely. There was no way the little wind could have done that. It wasn't strong enough to even go past our laundry room where our back door is on the opposite side of the house, let alone slam into heavy front door completely shut. I think that might have just been negative energies or maybe something acting out negatively since the month was a really hard month, but that doesn't even compare to what happened before this. Around Halloween, I was terrorized by footsteps on the ceiling that sounded human and leaves crunching outside with nothing out there. We have an attic, but it's sealed and there's no way for anything to get inside. It was so bad I felt like I was going insane. It went on for a couple of days before it finally stopped. More recently, I was sitting on the couch at night when I suddenly felt intense fear for completely unknown reasons. It was so much more intense than what I normally feel, and it came out of nowhere. I looked up a prayer online for protection and recited it. Immediately, the tension in the air was thicker, and it felt like I couldn't breathe. The dog was outside, and the cat was in my room, and for a second, I started to the second verse, and they both started acting up, barking and meowing like crazy. It was like something didn't want me to keep going, but I pushed through the prayer, and the second I finished it, the feeling stopped. The animal stopped, and it all just stopped. I went to my room immediately after because I was so freaked out. Sometime after sending my last update, my best friend experienced something that I didn't think she'll ever forget. For some context, I have an undiagnosed sleep disorder that is best described as me having intense insomnia for a couple of weeks straight, and then having intense hyperinsomnia for another couple of weeks. It's a vicious cycle that I need testing for, but the point is that it's not unusual for me to be awake late in the night and early in the morning. Like right now, it's past 4 a.m. as I'm typing this. I rarely go into her room, maybe once in a blue moon if I'm looking for something, but if I do, I try to tiptoe as quietly as I can and leave as quickly as I can. She can be a light sleeper, so I'd feel awful if I accidentally woke her up over a bottle of Tylenol or something. Well, one particular night, it was probably between 4 and 5 in the morning if I had to guess, and I had just gone to bed. I didn't think much of it other than I have this intense need to not be in the open area of the mini hall between our rooms where the bathroom is, or the living room for that matter. After that last update, you can imagine that I followed every instinct pretty quickly. I went to bed and tried to forget it, but the next day when we talked, she told me something that blew me away. She woke up in the middle of the night for an unknown reason, and just so happened to look up as she was moving, only to see me, lingering over her in the dark, just staring at her. She said it looked exactly like me, and she was going to ask what I was doing in there when she heard my bedroom door close. And that was the same time I was going to bed. Whatever it was, I actually turned and looked out of the door towards my room when it heard me shutting my door loudly. She froze in absolute fear, and after a few minutes, she finally managed to turn on her light and it immediately disappeared. She slept with a nightlight on for days after this, and one night, maybe a day or two later, she saw something flash across the room. We think it might have been whatever it was that had pretended to be me still hanging around, but unable to do anything because of the light, but we don't know for sure. Whatever's going on, it's past mimicking our voices. Sometimes it feels like it's taking us, ignoring it as a challenge. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Why did that remind me of the movie Lights Out? Like you guys know what I'm talking about? The mom had a secret, I don't want to give away the plot, but anyways, there was this thing and she hid in the shadows, and if you turned on the light, she couldn't be seen. I feel like there was another movie that happened in as well. What was it? I don't know. Anyways, that's what I thought of. I do still think ignoring it's the best. I think doing cleansings and all of that would also help. But if it's getting really bad, I would consider a cord cutting ritual because it's formed an attachment to you at this point, and that's not going to go away no matter how much you ignore it. If that attachment has formed, it's not gonna hurt. I don't think it's necessarily making it worse. I don't think that's what's making it worse. I think it's getting worse because that attachment's getting stronger. So I would consider banishments or cord cutting rituals, personally. Because, yeah, that doesn't need to be in your space if it's terrorizing everyone. Alright, next story. This story, if you can call it that, happened when I was little, maybe around 5 or 6, if not a year or so older. It's probably not very scary to most, but it was to me, especially at such a young age. I'm from West Virginia and lived here all of my life. My mother was also born and raised here in the Wyoming County region, which is where this takes place. We would always make a few trips or so per year for special occasions or such up to my grandparents' house on my mom's side. Their house had always had such a weird feeling to it, along with a bit of land around it, but never anything malicious as far as I remember. On one of these visits, the family was just scattered around the house doing different stuff. Some just chatting in the kitchen, some in the living room watching TV, and either my grandpa or uncle on the couch sleeping. We heard a knock on the door, which was odd, since nobody was expecting anyone and I was sent to answer it. I opened the door only to see no one and nothing that could have made that noise. So I shrugged it off as a child and just shut the door, only for another knock to come a few seconds later. Opened the door to nothing yet again. This was very distinctly a knock on the door as if it were a person. I closed the door only to have it happen a third time. By the second time, the adults had already seemed a bit off and concerned. Thinking back, by the third time, it was either my grandpa or uncle, whichever was laying on the couch, who opened it. There was still nothing. Everyone seemed to brush it off as nothing and just go back to normal after a few minutes, but as a child I found it creepy and was a little scared at that point. I ended up being able to brush it off after a while and go back to sleep or whatever I was doing. This wasn't the only experience that I would have there, just the most notable. Most of the things that happened were just the weird feelings from the house or that you'd hear the sound of dishes clinking in the kitchen at night. Sorry this is a bit long-winded. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it's something that's always stuck with me. I have other experiences I'd like to tell you about, but I don't want to make this even longer. Thanks for reading. If and when you do, please pet the kitties for me. Sorry for this extra email, but I forgot to clarify that the knocks came in threes. Not only did it happen 3 times, there were 3 knocks with each one. That is not a coincidence. That is on purpose. I would love to hear the other stories from that house. And I think it's because I just read a story about the black-eyed children, but that's literally all I can think of right now. I know it's not. I don't feel like it's that at all, but that is all I can think of. Like, I can't even articulate what I think was going on because I think it's the black-eyed children. And I know it's not. It's just in my brain. So we're in a bit of a fit change. I had to stop mid-video because I lost my voice. I don't know. I feel fine. I felt fine. I don't know what's going on, but I've noticed with certain stories, I will just magically lose my voice. Don't know if that's connected or not, but let's continue on with that video. Let's figure out where we left off. I don't have that many stories to tell you, but I do live in a very haunted house where I've had a lot of things happen. This might be a long email, so I apologize. My mom and I are very spiritually inclined, by the way. We've lived in this house for over 12 years now, and I'm not sure if it's a mimic or not, but my parents will often hear me calling for my mom when I'm either not home or busy doing something. I don't call for my mom often, and even when I do, I usually go get her after calling once. My ex-boyfriend used to hear it too when I was right next to him, and he would both hear my mom calling my name when she wasn't. Stuff like this would still happen all the time. I think it was around 2 weeks now, but I really wanted to go out to my hot tub, and the weather was really bad, so I wasn't sure if it was a good idea. I was talking about it to my mom in the kitchen while making dinner when I walked into the different room and grabbed something and then came back through the same door. I looked down to see a coin that wasn't there when I walked out. I showed my mom and she said that it was my guardian angel trying to tell me something, and of course I believed that. I connected the dots that it could be them telling me not to go outside later, so I grabbed my pendulum and asked if it was a good idea to go outside. It said no. I trusted it and didn't go out. I may not know what would have happened if I did, but I do believe it must have not been something good. So, counter thing to that it could have been, sometimes Fae leave shiny little gifts, and it's important to not accept those. So depending on if anything else has happened, I would keep your eye out to see if it was a Fae. I haven't read the rest, but just a little side note. Before this story, I want to say that the spirits in our house don't like people that are new or when people fight, so keep that in mind for other stories as well. In March of 2023, I had my aunt and uncle visit for my papa's birthday. They live in America and I'm in Canada. They were staying in our house at my parents', now my bedroom, which has a lot of activity in it. My aunt is very spiritual like my mom, but my uncle is very religious and simply just doesn't believe. Later that night, we all went to bed, and in the morning, my uncle told us that in the night he heard a little boy asking to play, and then he got grabbed by the ankle and almost pulled all the way out of the bed. We had many kid spirits in our home who enjoyed messing, but he made us sage the room and add more protections. There's not much of a story to this one, but my mom has a camera in the living room to catch activity, which she does all the time. Hopefully the photo attached, you can see the person sitting on her couch. I don't know if it's paranormal or anything, but I believe that there's no such thing as coincidences. So last week, I got into a little argument with a friend of mine. Let's call that friend L. It was nothing bad, just a miscommunication, and all was well again, but I ended up asking them what their favorite color was, and they said blue. A couple days later, I went to get my nails done, and I let my nail tech choose the color blue. Around 30 minutes later, I got a mystery bag from the store. I opened it, and there was a blue necklace and a matching cross that went together. I've been looking for a cross necklace for months. I found it really odd, but we'll see if anything comes from it. I have many more things that I could talk about, so let me know if you want to hear them. Yes, absolutely. Those are really spooky. I don't know, just the shiny object correlation is screaming fae to me. I just want to know if anything else is happening that's fae-like. You know what I mean? Because I think they kept the ring, so I just want to know what else is happening. All right, next story. I'm a new listener, and my best friend turned me onto your channel. Love you, Rose. Thank you, Rose, and welcome to the channel. I'm writing this while I listen to the stories you're reading. I'm 44 and have lots of stories with other energies and ghosts. The first one, and the one that sticks out to me the most, is when I was 5 or 6. Yes, I know I was young, but it stayed with me. This night was like any other. I'd just fallen asleep. Late that night, I was woken up by a sharp tug on my ankle. That's creepy. The last story had an ankle tug. I thought it was my mom trying to wake me up, but there was no one there, and my leg was freezing. I sat up in the bed to see who was trying to wake me. My bedroom door was open when it was always closed. I got this feeling to look over my shoulder, and when I did, I wish I hadn't. In the window was a skull with glowing bright red eyes. This window was on the second story of my house. The only thing I could do was move as fast as I could to the bathroom. It was the only thing I could think of to do, and yes, going to my mom wasn't a thought in my head. I was in the bathroom for a while, don't know the time, but I have to get back into my bedroom because my mom or her boyfriend were getting up and I didn't want to get in trouble for playing in the bathroom. As I made my way back down to the room, I could see the skull was gone and there was no glowing or anything red in the room. So I closed my door, looked under my bed like you should to make sure there was nothing in my closet, and got back in bed. I didn't sleep well for the rest of the night. When I did get up, the only other weird thing I noticed was an outline of 2 fingers on the bottom of my bedroom door. If my mom saw them, she didn't say anything to me. Honestly, running to your bathroom's so real. I mean, it was probably closer. That makes sense to me. The second one is the first time I stayed with my stepdad. He had a very old and not working grandfather clock. I had my bedroom door open because he has dogs and they liked me. I rolled over to look out my door at the clock. The face of the clock opened and I was like, okay, and rolled back over. That morning I asked my stepdad about the clock and he said that his great-grandma who hated him was in the clock. So every night I was there, I would say goodnight to her and she never opened again. I think she was letting me know that she was there and to behave. I hope you read this one on your channel. Grandfather clocks, I don't like them. My aunt used to have one in her house, and when I would stay the night with her and it would chime, oh my god, it sent shivers down my spine. I hated it. Okay, that's all I picked out for this video, but I want to read one more because I feel like it's not super long, so we have time. Let's find us another one. Fun fact, in case you guys wanted to know, I like put all of your emails in different folders because I get some for TikTok, some for Patreon, some for YouTube. And so I literally just scroll through the list and just boop, a story. So that's how yours gets picked. I literally do not read them before I read them on camera. And I'm not gonna lie, there's been a few that I have had to like change some stuff and things like that because they're rough stories. All right, let's read one more story. Hi, Morgan and Eric. I'm so sorry if the story is hard to follow. My ADHD is so bad right now. If you need me to clarify anything, just let me know. This story keeps getting longer and longer the more I think of my experience. It really started when me and my mom moved in with my now stepdad in a small Utah town that is now getting much bigger. We live right up against the mountains, specifically Ben Lomond. I've always got a strange feeling from the area and my home, especially the basement where my room is. My first experience happened probably about 4 years ago. This was my first time ever experiencing a dream or nightmare like this as well. I remember waking up in my game room, which is at the very end of the short and narrow hallway in the basement. Then I decided to walk into the hallway where I saw a tall, white, hunched figure with only a mouth and no face. It turned to look at me and lunged forward. That's where the nightmare would end, and I'd always wake up in a cold sweat and an overwhelming feeling of dread. This nightmare reoccurred over and over again for about a month. I had a very vivid imagination, so I never thought anything of it until I brought myself a tourmaline bracelet and the nightmare suddenly stopped. My father and stepmom were the only 2 people in my family who believed this sort of thing. When I told them about it, I remember my dad telling me to be careful about the things that I imagine or create in my head. My dad is a conspiracy theorist and not the cool kind, So take this with a grain of salt, but he basically insinuated that because I'm such an emotional and creative person, I could manifest things all on my own. Now, my second experience was a sort of series of things. This happened when I was in freshman year of high school, so I was around 15, I think. My episodic dreams began, did I say that right? Episodic? Dreams began to pick up again, but this time they were very different. These were in a world with characters, and I could control nothing but myself and my actions. The only real similarity was the fact that I could use all 5 senses, and they were repetitive. But this new dream was repetitive in a way where it was like a story that would develop each time I had it. Then I learned about shifting and kind of realized that's what I was probably doing. The main takeaway from this dream was a specific character who I'll call Keegan. He was essentially all of my fears and insecurities, but presented in an attractive way. He was a very manipulative character, but in a charming and psychopath way. Anytime I talk about any of these 2 dreams, I feel kind of sick to my stomach for some reason. About a week ago, I was telling my friend about it. I'll call her Braylon. We like to take late night drives through the mountains pass, into the valley, and then loop around the reservoir through the canyon. We did this loop about 3 times just talking about those experiences, specifically about Keegan, who I don't think was just a regular character. Once I figured out I was shifting, I wrote a script and Keegan was able to defy it, which was horrifying. Anyways, on this final loop, we were about to make it to my house to have a sleepover. We're probably about 20 or so blocks away from my home on a relatively empty and secluded road. It was probably around 11 p.m. at this time. Braylon mentioned something about imagining Keegan standing beneath a lamppost, and the second she said that, each and every lamppost light went out one by one as we drove by. The second we got off the road, it stopped. When we got to my house, we played the Red Book game, challenge, whatever you want to call it. Braylon has a weird thing where she'll just say random things during tarot readings or things like that. She said a number, so she had me close my eyes and point to a spot on the page, and it said his name. Just his name, and that was it. So now I believe I'm dealing with something bigger than I bargained for here, or like I'm being delusional or something. Lights keep flickering in my house, and I just keep feeling like I'm being watched when I come home from overnight shifts late at night. Okay, Keegan does sound like a bit of a manifestation. Here's the thing, and people might not agree with me, but I think where we go essentially when we dream is somewhere in another realm, and what it sounds like to me is something followed you back, which can happen. It's happened to me before. So cleansings and banishments will help with that if you haven't tried that. I definitely recommend a banishment because this sounds like an attachment at that point. And the fact that things are happening when you're wide awake long after you've woken up, that's bad. So I would definitely banish that entity because he does not need to be there. But with that, I will go ahead and close out this video. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Sorry for the costume change in the middle of it, but I will see you next time.